little over a decade later, the U.S. military conducted experiments to bring weather to the battlefield. October 1966. The Vietnam War is in full swing. U.S. military scientists are devising a way to slow down enemy forces using the weather.
U.S. had gone from advisor status to in-field combat status, and we're not doing well. As a result of not being able to make progress on the ground, the U.S. went to bringing the battle into the atmosphere above the battlefield.
The Air Force employed a groundbreaking military directive called Project Popeye.
Project Popeye was a weather modification program that involved cloud seeding, and the idea was to produce or exaggerate the monsoon rains that are traditional in that region.
Experiments are carried out beforehand with the military aircraft dropping silver iodide crystals in clouds over a strip of the Laos Panhandle east of the Belovens Plateau in the Sekong River Valley. 50 cloud seeding runs are conducted. 82% of the clouds seeded produce rain within a brief period.
So Project Popeye then became Operation Popeye. It became a proper military program during the Vietnam War.
The goal of Operation Popeye was to extend the monsoon season and create an inordinate amount of rainfall by seeding clouds over the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
The Ho Chi Minh Trail was the primary supply route by which the North Vietnamese Army really supplied its troops that were operating in combat forces operating in South Vietnam, as well as supplying the Viet Cong. So it was the most significant logistical center of gravity to the North Vietnamese, and it was an important strategic objective for the United States and our ally South Vietnam to try to interdict that supply line to cut off those supplies to the enemy.
Operation Popeye's objectives are to soften road surfaces on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, cause landslides along roadways, and wash out river crossings.
Welcome to News from the Pew, where we take news from around the interwebs and distill it so it is slightly less scary. I am your host, Rick Barrett, the only one of these Catholic shows that actually allows his guests to speak. And I am happy to have my panel with me, starting with Fawaz Yazi, also known as Enoch. Follow him on YouTube and on Instagram. He had a really great message coming up for Lent on why you should fast and all the other. It was so good I forgot the other two.
Don't go off the rails there, buddy.
All real quick. And then we have our good friend Jonathan Arrington joining us to talk about all kinds of things and look at it from a different perspective that I have no idea about. So we're glad to have him on to class up the show a little bit. And then I'm joined as always by the godfather of Catholic media, one Steve Cunningham, who is ready to disavow DC and any and all train transportation systems. So gentlemen, let's just get to the main event. The event in question, I'll talk about it real quick, and then we have some video clips. We saw a couple of them. That giant fireball, if you hadn't seen it by then, that was actually a train, because on February 3rd, you had a freight train that was carrying vinyl chloride. It derailed on a Norfolk Southern Railway in East Palestine in Ohio. Emergency crews then decided in their genius wisdom to conduct a controlled burn of the spill, which is why you may have saw these pictures that look like a mushroom cloud that was blown away. This released hydrogen chloride and phosphane and other words that I can't pronounce into the air, and it's been pretty devastating. At first, you had reports of a total blackout, not the actual physical blackout from the burn, but a media blackout. Reporters were being arrested. Everything was just being kept hush hush until they realized that social media was there and this cat was out of the bag. And so the White House hasn't said anything. Pete Buttigieg hasn't said anything. And now we're looking at probably the worst environmental disaster in this union's history. But let's take a look. We actually have a video of the arrest of the reporter who is just trying to get some information out to his
Michael Reagan will be in East Palestine to talk to people who are still concerned about the effects of all of this on their health. Suzanne Stratford was at a meeting last night to hear some of those concerns.
I think we all want answers. Everybody wants to know what the hell's in the air, in the water. I want to know what I sucked into my lungs.
Hundreds line up early outside of East Palestine High School Wednesday night.
It's important. We're faced with a lot of tough decisions and we're missing a whole lot of information. So that's why.
Breaking news that just unfolded at the governor's press conference in Ohio after that evacuation order and chemical hazards order had been lifted. There was that dangerous train derailment just last week.
Yeah, it's a bit dangerous.
Our correspondent, Evan Lambert, had been in the middle of his report. He actually had to stop his report live on air because the governor had started speaking and they told reporters apparently to be quiet. So we had to stop his live report. Well, moments later, he was thrown to the ground by authorities, roughed up. He is handcuffed and arrested. As you're looking at this video now, you can see them speaking to him. But look, there he is. That's our reporter, Evan Lambert. He is on the ground. He is being put into handcuffs, and now they are taking him out. So he was trying to cover this press conference as it was happening. He was covering it from the back of the room. He was speaking quietly in the middle of rush hour. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine addressed this situation during that press conference. We want to listen to that, but first, let's just watch the rest of this video as it plays out. So obviously, you can see his photographer still with him there. And look, he's being put into the back of a law enforcement vehicle there for doing his job, for being a journalist. Again, we saw him put onto the ground, placed into handcuffs, escorted out of the building while he was reporting on a press conference to alert the people of Ohio in this area of East Palestine, Ohio, whether or not they would be allowed to go back into their homes. So this was not a secret. This was the governor speaking. All right, let's listen to what the governor had to say.
You know, it has always been my practice that if I'm doing a press conference, if someone wants to report out there and they want to be talking to the people back on channel, whatever, they have every right to do that. So, you know, that should not, if someone was stopped from doing that, or told they could not do that, that was wrong. And it was nothing that I authorized, and certainly it would be something that I would not want to see happen. This happens, you know, we do this, I do this all the time, and yeah, so I'm certainly very, very sorry that happened. I don't know all the facts, but he or she, whoever was arrested, had every right to be reporting and do what they do every single day.
Absolutely. That's certainly an amendment right there. So we're going to go back to this video before we move on from this. So Evan, again, giving his live report on rush hour, just happened in our last hour. The governor came to the podium, was apparently going to start speaking, and they asked him to stop. Let's listen to what happens here.
I don't really know if there's much to listen to, lady, but I appreciate the effort.
Yeah, it sounds like that audio has been slowed down.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
so
I'm glad you're listening to me.
We can't hear.
All right, so I'm pretty sure we'll get to our hazmat guy in a second, but the entire they call it the Mid-Atlantic. Essentially, the Mid-Atlantic is now under a poisonous cloud, and there's really no understanding about the chemicals in the atmosphere. There have been reports, and before we actually get into the rest of it, Steve, let's get to the one person that was actually able to kind of break this down on TikTok. I know I hate TikTok, but there's a couple videos of the gentleman who actually breaks down the chemical side and why this is really bad, not just the physical appearance side.
Hasn't been getting a lot of coverage, and the coverage that it has been getting hasn't been very good. So let's talk about the trail derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. East Palestine's about an hour north of Pittsburgh, almost halfway to Cleveland. Norfolk Southern has a rail line that goes right through town, and this derailment happened right on the edge outside of town on the border of PA and Ohio. Of the cars that crashed, 5 of them contained vinyl chloride. It's a monomer used to make PVC. The reporting on this has gotten vinyl chloride confused with polyvinyl chloride, the polymer made out of vinyl chloride. Now, the reason that this distinction is really important is vinyl chloride is very hazardous and very flammable. Polyvinyl chloride is a plastic that's used in like everything. The other thing about vinyl chloride is that it boils at 8 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's shipped in its liquid form. Meaning that when these trains crashed and these started leaking, they weren't just leaking liquid, but they were spewing boiling gas. So vinyl chloride is really toxic. OSHA has the permissible limit of how much you can be exposed to it during an 8-hour shift as a 1 ppm part per million, average over 8 hours. So prior to this, the biggest spill of this chemical was in New Jersey, where one train car and about 23,000 gallons of vinyl chloride were spilled, but it didn't catch on fire. Now, this crash in Ohio has 5 train cars. These kinds of tanker cars can carry between 25 and 33,000 gallons. Let's call it 250 to 250,000 pounds of vinyl chloride. That's per train car, 5 train cars. There's maybe 1 million pounds of this toxic chemical spilling into the ground and also boiling off into the air. But then it caught on fire. I think this is where the reporting is really bad, because no one is mentioning what the byproduct of vinyl chloride burning is. Of the many byproducts of burning vinyl chloride, one of them is hydrogen chloride. Hydrogen chloride is really unstable and latches onto water, like just water vapor in the atmosphere, and that turns into hydrochloric acid. So right now, government officials from the railroad, both the governor of Pennsylvania and Ohio, are calling burning off the 1 million pounds of this stuff a success, but not mentioning that it means that we have hundreds of thousands of pounds of acid in the air, potentially. Now, ever since engineering school, I've studied a lot of industrial accidents. I just find it really fascinating, and organizations like the Chemical Safety Board, NTSB, and OSHA all have like really good reports available to the public. I think as a designer, it's really good to learn about mistakes. When looking at these kinds of industrial disasters across time, there are a couple things that are pretty universal across all of them. One, the responsible party, in this case, Norfolk Southern Railway, always plays down the reality of the situation. Politicians also just repeat the same lines, and then news outlets just repeat the same. So all we're hearing is the responsible party's word. Interested in donating money.
Yeah,
to
pretty
people of East
pretty
Palestine,
frightening.
Ohio. One of my close friends started a GoFundMe. Her mother and stepfather both live and work there. This money isn't just for them, though. It hasn't been getting a lot of coverage, and the coverage that it has been getting hasn't been very good. So
I think we already watched
the
that
trail
one.
derailment in East Palestine, Ohio.
Yeah,
East
that was
Palestine's
the
about
other
an
one we
hour
hadn't
north
watched
of
yet.
Pittsburgh, almost halfway to Cleveland. Norfolk Southern has a rail line that goes right
Because
through
we already
town,
heard the
and
very
this
soothing
derailment happened right on
music
the
of
edge
this one.
outside of
So
town,
we
on the
gotta
border
watch
of
the one
PA
where he's in
and
the
Ohio.
black shirt.
Of the cars that crashed, 5 of them contained vinyl chloride. It's a monomer used to make PVC. The reporting on this has gotten vinyl chloride confused. Tonight, there was a new document dropped. Update
There
for
you
the
go.
Norfolk Southern disaster in East Palestine, Ohio. This might be the biggest update we've had yet. It's a complete manifest from the train from Norfolk Southern. The EPA makes sure to note that initially they were only notified of the chemical compounds in the trains orally, also saying that they're not responsible for what's in this document. Just like all the other EPA documents that I've posted, they're available from a link in my bio. The EPA also released air results today. I don't know if we're going to get a chance to talk about them because this is a lot to talk about. There's a lot to go over, a lot of things that have been confirmed, and then a whole bunch of stuff that we're hearing for the first time. So the vinyl chloride. Train cars 28 through 31 were vinyl chloride. Car number 55 was also. We're gonna have to make a whole video to talk about the vinyl chloride because that's a bigger thing, but let's just say I wouldn't think right now that at this point in time, vinyl chloride is a worry. I think concerning air, there's more of a concern about particulate, but that's going to have to be another video. This is just train contents. Some things that we didn't know. There were 3 train cars of diethylene glycol. One of the cars completely spilled and 2 of them were leaking. This chemical is flammable, it's toxic, it's used in the manufacturing of plastics. It's also used in some brake fluids. Based on the tank car class, that's these things here, there is at least 16,000 gallons that were lost. No definitive indication whether if it was burned or if it was just spilled. There's 1 car of polypropylene glycol that was breached. This is also a chemical that's used in the manufacturing of plastics. It is considered to have low toxicity to humans, however, 16,000 gallons of it pouring into ground isn't great. There's 1 tank car of propylene glycol, not to be confused with polypropylene glycol, propylene glycol, or PG as people who vape would know. It's low toxicity, it's used in some food products, it's used in vape liquids, but again, 16,000 gallons of it pouring into the ground, not good. The butyl acrylate that they did mention earlier, there was 1 tank car, it was breached and then caught on fire. It's very flammable, so I assume that that has all been burned away. Talk about cars that we know burn. So we have 2 hopper cars of PE, that's polyethylene plastic. These are going to be hopper cars of little plastic pellets used in a ton of different stuff, like all over your house, plastic bottles, toys. 4 hopper cars of what is labeled as polyvinyl. They're hopper cars, so I'm assuming that this is PVC, polyvinyl chloride pellets. On the railroad, there's 1 burned, there's 1 burning, and 2 that had some amount burned. Toxic byproducts to the PVC burning, like the vinyl chloride burning itself. 1 car of balls burned, 1 car of sheet steel burned, 1 car of frozen veg, and then 1 car of powdered flakes. Not sure what the flakes are. List an unknown status for the ethylene glycol monobutyl and the ethyl hexylacrylate. Isobutylene was not breached. Now, this is the big thing. There were 2 cars of petroleum oil completely gone, and 3 that lost some amount. These kinds of tank cars can hold anywhere from 16 to 30,000 gallons. What we're really talking about here is an oil spill. 1 gallon of petroleum oil spilled can pollute up to 1 million gallons of groundwater.
Did we lose Rick? All right, we'll go with Tucker.
How bad is this? I mean, it does take some experience with the chemistry to really know that. Sil Caggiano is an expert in this. He's a hazardous waste authority. He says the town of East Palestine has effectively been nuked. He joins us tonight to explain what that means. So I appreciate your coming on. How do you, having spent your life assessing things like chemical spills, how do you assess the condition of East Palestine tonight?
It's very troublesome. These poor individuals, through no fault of their own, became victims of systemic failures within the rail transportation system, and it manifested itself in this mushroom cloud that they had to experience in their town. One of the reasons why I made the comment about we nuked a town with chemicals is because there was somebody from Darlington, Pennsylvania, who was videoing the cloud that had went over his property. And you could see fallout coming out of the cloud going onto his property. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, it reminds you of one of those apocalyptic shows where the nuclear fallout's coming out. And I thought about it and I says, well, yeah, we basically did nuke a whole town just to get a railroad going, back in service. And earlier on, I got involved in this because news media were not being told the truth. Days into this, no, train consist was available. They didn't know what they had. And, that flies in the face of logic. If you're going to mitigate a problem, if you're going to have your fire department and other, responding teams take care of it, you should know what the heck you've got. And it got to the point where they were showing me pictures of train cars, the local media, and I was identifying what was in based on UNID numbers or train car numbers. And when they told me their plan, at that point you had a few cars burning. They had unmonitored hand lines there keeping the tankers cool. And then I find out that they're pulling the unmonitored hand lines keeping the tankers cool. I said, well, that's just going to cause the tanker cars to heat up, which they did. And then they announced that one was very near catastrophic failure. And I said, well, if they don't put water back on it, it's going to continue to heat up and it's going to what's called a blevy. And it's going to damage other containers. And then I was told, no, they're going to detonate all these cars so that it doesn't happen. I could tell you, Mr. Carlson, I've been looking at rail incidents over and over because in Youngstown, Ohio, there's 3 rail lines that run through our town. So as a chief and as a instructor, I trained my guys to anticipate stuff. And I would go case study after case study after case study, coming up with different scenarios just to keep it going. And I've never once in 39 years ever heard of them blowing up train cars, dumping all the chemicals into a trench and lighting them on fire. I was dumbfounded. Yeah. And, when you lit this stuff on fire, you were creating phosgenes, you were creating hydrogen chlorides, you created this plume, and up in this plume was all the incomplete combustion products of everything that was there. Stuff, if you looked at the guy's video, stuff is precipitating down into people's property. There's a lot of questions, and the answers came slow. And, first you get, well, now we found vinyl chlorides in the water. Well, yeah, no joke. You're going to find that. And it seemed like everything was drips and dribbles. Instead of, one of the things I learned is you tell the truth, you tell it all, you tell it first, and you tell them how you're going to solve the problem. And none of that was forthcoming.
Area well and groundwater are safe. However, after this couple saw dead fish in this creek that you're looking at, they're
All dead
deciding
fish.
to not take any chances.
Minnows are dead.
Oh, there was hundreds.
Russell Murphy is referring to the fish now belly up in Leslie Run.
Everything's fine.
Noticed them last night, barely 48 hours after the fiery derailment 5 miles away.
This is huge, huge environmental effects.
That's now one of many concerns the EPA now faces.
The impact of the fish, yes, there was a impact to those.
Just sleeping
However,
with the
levels
fishies.
as we have seen it are protective to groundwater. We are aware there are some wells along that for residential wells.
Environmental cleanup crews were at and actually in that water today. So are these booms, which are used to catch and stop anything that shouldn't be flowing here, or into water wells, which Murphy uses for just about everything.
Yeah, so this is definitely an environmental disaster, and it's absolutely terrible. So let's jump to Fawaz first, because you are in the whenever you look at the maps, the clouds, Kentucky is completely covered with all that.
I'm in it.
What have you guys heard from your guys? I know we went back and forth in the Signal chat. If you want to let the at your level, what are you seeing? What are your concerns going forward with this, and your reaction to the derailment period?
Thanks for inviting me again. I'm happy to be with you guys again this week. And excuse me if you can hear the rain from my metal roof here. It's been raining all day. One of the major issues that we're concerned about here in Kentucky is, I'm about 400 miles away, but the folks in North Kentucky and even Louisville, if you look at the Ohio River, it goes through Louisville, and that's what a lot of that city gets its drinking water from, unfortunately. And if that water is contaminated, which we know it is, and as they're telling us, water's fine, guys. As a matter of fact, head over to the creek, grab some of that fish, and grill them because they're delicious. So what's so unfortunate about this is it depends on where the wind's going to blow. You're going to get other states that are going to be affected from this. They're saying all the way down to Tennessee, possibly, depending on the wind blows. I know Pennsylvania is affected. Now it's going towards New York because the wind's blowing that way. And this morning there was a Facebook post in Lexington. Saw a bunch of dead birds on the ground. Now, mind you, it's been raining, it's been lightning and thunder around here, so I'm not going to sit there and say that this is why it's happening. There's other effects, other reasons. But one of the major concerns is the big cities. I'm not, me myself personally, my family, we're not too concerned. We have a reservoir over here which doesn't connect to the Ohio River or any of the Kentucky River. We have our own reservoir here, which our town, which is very agricultural friendly, which is probably the next target, is what we enjoy. So, but what about the people in the city? Because this is going to not only affect Ohio, but it's going to affect multiple states because of their incompetence. And this is what happens when you hire people according to what they think they are or how they feel they are versus their competence. And we've seen one problem after another after we had, the man who had paternity leave after his so-called husband had children, which is impossible. And this is my biggest issue here is you have incompetent people And you heard what the guy said, the expert was talking, they go through these things. They go through training because everything is possible. Listen, there's about 1,000 trains, there's about 1,000 derailment trains that happen on a yearly basis. So this isn't new. What's new is, what do you do when something like this happens? And when you don't have smart people, people who actually care about others, they just want, they want to get through it, cover the story, hide, don't care who gets affected, and just move on to the next project, this becomes an issue. So it's not a Catholic society, and we know this, because if it was, you would actually have competent people who are virtuous, who understand humanity, who care about the community, and this is not what we're seeing. And it's very unfortunate. And then we started highlighting. We had a spill in Houston. I think it was a gentleman in Texas. We had a spill in Arizona. We had a derailment train in Detroit just this morning. Luckily, there was no spill there. And a lot of this is because they're trying to make these trains faster. They're trying to get through faster. And these trains they're machines. You only do what you tell them to do. So it's going to cause some more issues. And I don't know what's going to happen within the next few years. I know we're seeing animals dying, but you just displace people out of their home, out of their communities. I was reading a story about one of the families who breed dogs, and this was their business. They had 2 businesses. They can't go back to that city anymore. It's not livable anymore. So what do you do? When you're these folks, there's no compensation. So this becomes the major issue here. So I'm praying for all these folks, and I'm praying that God has mercy on us, and all this goes away and everyone's okay. But you just don't know. It's too early to tell.
Yeah, that is true. John, what about the idea here, or what about the fact that this happened and our federal government, Walter White, we'll get to you, buddy, but hold on. He's got 4 more masks he's got to put on.
This is more safe.
That is more safe. John, this happened and the government had no problem executing. I made the joke, they executed Order 66 on the Mid-Atlantic region as far as releasing this toxic chemical on these states. You can make the argument, you can be a conspiracy theorist and be like, oh, these are all red states that voted for Trump and they had no problem lighting this sucker up all over them. But that's also because they're more rural populations. But just the response of the federal government and how it should be a wake-up call to all these people that think the government is going to be there to help you and save you, when in reality you're just you're a pawn on the chessboard, you're a note in a spreadsheet.
Well, I mean, you said it right there, Rick. I think the connection between the government and what we ought to be taking out of all this is something that a guy who's kind of vulgar, and it's hard to listen to him if you have sensitive ears. I'll be on or read his stuff. I read him usually. I'll watch some things he puts out as well. But a really perceptive guy. I'll just call him CJ, kind of an alternative media guy. A lot of people know him, CJ Hopkins. And, kind of his point all along has been that the movement, at least for the last, let's say 15 years or so, has been towards global powers taking over, like actually exercising their power now, not just kind of building the power, but exercising it. Because in order for people to beg for some sort of government intervention, there has to be some sort of disaster they know they and their local community can't handle, right? I mean, that's it's more common sense. Well, what I'm starting to piece together, let me see if I can get my thoughts together for you, is that like Fawaz was saying, the incompetence, the hiring according to melanin and not merit, as I like to say, the whole point behind that is to have people so fed up with, and this is happening in nations throughout the world, because you see almost no nation initially fought the jab. That's kind of example number one. So people now throughout the world are almost in lockstep again, saying, anybody with half a brain, I don't trust my nation to care for me or those whom I care for. I don't trust my nation's leaders at all. And I think that's what the globalists want. They want us to be distrustful, mistrustful of our political leaders, and especially our national leaders, because they're the ones that really wield the most power. So they'd be the ones who would hand over the reins, because eventually they're just going to say, they're going to throw their hands up, as they kind of already have, saying that they don't know what to do about these things. So I guess what I'm saying is, my thought, if you want to take huge conspiracy theories here, is that various global actors have been paying national politicians, all right, federal politicians, to hire incompetent people, because that's the only explanation for why you'd hire someone like Buttigieg, or some of these Jean-Pierre, some of these other crazy folks, that the defense secretary guy who went around stealing women's clothes. The only explanation is that they were paid to, hire such incompetent, crazy folks. And the reason they're doing that is so that now, when actual disastrous situations are popping up all over the place, to our power grid, on rail lines everywhere throughout the country, all over the country, that you're going to have to beg for some sort of actor who is competent, right? And those actors who are competent, because they have not been hiring idiots all along, even if they've been hiring, okay, Schwab, he is kind of a goofball, and he does have the Dr. Evil voice thing going on, and the particular Germanic butchering of English that makes you laugh. But these folks aren't idiots in the global scene, the WEFs and the WHOs and other things. They know how to manipulate. So my thought essentially is that these things are happening now with purpose, with reason. I'm not saying someone planned every single last aspect of what happened in Ohio, but all the chips were in play for this to play out more or less as it has. If I've made any sense there, does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, I think you're speaking where there have been people who have noticed it's a controlled demolition in certain aspects, whether it's the economy, now you could say infrastructure, and other ways to slowly, because it all can't fall at once, because then people react, there's revolt, uprising. You do it slowly. It's the frog in the boiling water that everybody's used to death in the last 3 years, although it still applies.
These
But
frogs are dead.
the frog is dead by now. He's been boiling for 3+ years. Sorry, Steve. I know you had the mask on for 5 minutes.
I can't breathe anymore. You're trying to kill me. That's the conspiracy going on. He's trying to off me, ladies and
Hey,
gentlemen.
you had 95 videos. It's not my fault you put on the mask too soon, buddy.
I only had a couple. I don't know.
Anyway, Walter White, your point of view as far here's the funny thing. If you are ever going to wear a mask to try and keep particles and things out of your mouth, now would have actually kind of been the time to wear one, not for the last 2 years. So I think it is kind of ironic that once again it's detonated in a red area and people are like, I ain't wearing no mask. It's like, no, you actually may want to now.
Well, that goes with that meme about everyone saying putting like a hazmat suit. Hey, you wear this for this, or you're doing this. You have all these masks for different things, and then you get to the meme. Worst virus in the history of mankind. Here you go.
Yep.
Oh, you're asking me? Oh,
now you may speak.
I may speak. It's only 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Is this another Anthony? No, just kidding.
You can get mad at your other panelists, because
No, you're good. You're good. Here's just came in. Train cars that derailed in Ohio were labeled non-hazardous. Have y'all heard about this? Ohio residents are living a plot of the movie they helped make. I don't know if you guys seen this. White Noise was the movie, and back in 2021, the same city, East Palestine, Ohio. By the way, what's going on in actual Palestine? This is like that little documentary. What was it? Died Suddenly. That you can't find who died silently. All you see in search engines is all things debunk and died suddenly. So if you type Palestine in Google, you only see is East Palestine. You don't hear about Palestine anymore. Anyways, this movie was set to the exact same thing that these people were happening right now. Is a train wreck, airborne event, toxic event, airborne toxic events, crash. It's uncanny. Here's the video of it, of the trailer.
Oh, it's from Netflix. Boo. Fair use. Apparently, it looks like it's set in the 80s. Is the sound on? Ooh, carefree
hearing
bubble
any
sound.
sound.
Love it. Or we can't play the sound because of fair use. Velveeta, love the Velveeta. Love the hairstyle. Don't like that. Chinese food, dig it. It's gonna be mystery. Oh, this time it was a truck. Okay. It was like Optimus Prime's fault. Got it. And blue explosion. Boom, boom. Oh, yeah, there's the black smoke. Got it. Yeah, all right. Dad's like, it's okay. Mom's like, look at my haircut. Now, are there like zombies and stuff at the end of this?
No, it's just we're from the government and we're here to help.
That's the worst. I'd take zombies. I prefer zombies over that.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, how just what a coinky dink. Is it? I mean, just
is this life imitating art, Steve?
Unreal that has happened. Just a couple years ago, the same city, the same situation to the same people.
They interviewed people and they said, "Hey, I was in that movie. I was an extra in that movie."
Exactly. Here's from the UAE, Ohio right now. Here's the little stuff. They've had a big series on this. This is fantastic stuff. Well, not fantastic what's going on, but fantastic thread right here. Here's where I found our Asian guy was talking about the problems going on. Oh yeah, don't forget about this part. Remember, they're saying it's okay to go back, and here you have. Oh, where did I put it?
It looks like a stain on your carpet. It's so out of place, and it's just sitting there. And look how it's just drifting off to the south, man. Here's
awful. One that you don't forget about: Reagan.
We often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
Should have played that for the next thread, but hey, this reminded me of what was going on. Christine Whitman, back at Ground Zero.
You know asbestos was in there, is in those buildings, lead is in those buildings. There are the VOCs. However, the concentrations are such that they don't pose a health hazard. We're going to make sure everybody's safe.
And that what they're telling people out there. You can go back. It's not a big deal. You go back. The water's okay. And what you hear about from the government guys? They ain't going because they're not there. They feel that they fear for their safety. I think I have a video literally on that from CNN.
Guys, do you know right now? I don't mean to interrupt, but there's a massive 5-acre warehouse in Kissimmee, Florida, that is on fire with potentially hazardous fumes going on right now as we speak.
And never let a crisis go to waste.
Do you have any sense, given that in your words, this is an ongoing cleanup, can you give them any sort of a timeline when you believe you can say to them definitively, it's safe?
Erica, what I'd say is this is a fresh accident. We understand the community's angst. We are on the ground. We will conduct the cleanup. But we have to be able to get in and do the assessment. So as the conditions on the ground become safe so that we can put our scientists and engineers not in harm's way, but in a position where they could do their work, we will be then in a position to provide those updates to the public as soon as we can.
But until then,
keep the public updated. We have people on the ground now. And so we want to be transparent.
But I thought you couldn't put them on the
ground. So a couple of other real quick questions before I lose you for timing here. You just said that as the conditions become safe, you'll send in your teams. Are there any areas at this point in time which you believe are still unsafe?
Everywhere.
Well, it's an emergency response. And so obviously we want to be sure that we do not put anyone in harm's way, including our staff. So as we investigate,
notice those are the only people they care about.
As we investigate and as we look at the site, we will determine when and how we can get the appropriate staff in to do the appropriate testing.
Here's that fire that Rick was just talking about. A 5-acre Florida fire burns plastic pods outside Kissimmee.
They're burning the
Kissimmee.
pods. They're
Here's
burning the
Texas.
pods.
There's a stay-at-home order in Tucson still in effect that had been extended to 3-mile perimeter following yesterday's hazmat incident. Freeway still closed both directions. Tucson mayor and Arizona governor have been very quiet.
While you're looking at that, John, you wanted to get in something about that the movie, right? The burning movie. You have a point on that?
Yeah, just something. I know Steve and I have chatted about this before, but the an idea that's come through Corbett and others that Hollywood, for some reason, seems to drop things ahead of time to kind of mollify us and let us be prepared for it in a certain sense. So besides that, I was just noting because the only thing we could ever watch in seminary as far as TV shows was The Office. You know that guy, the kind of thin guy in The Office who ended up playing the Jack Ryan.
Oh yeah, John Krasinski.
Because yeah. I mean, good actor. I like him as an actor and all. So I just thought for curiosity's sake, I'll check it out. I heard it's not too bad and gross. And so we got to liking it and noticed that it took this odd pause even before the COVID stuff came out. A lot of things had to, they said, stop filming and all. This one took an odd pause of a few years, comes back on, this past December, I think it was. Yeah. And guess what they're dropping? I mean, supposedly this was supposed to come out in 2020.
Russian nuclear bomb.
Yeah, Russia and Ukraine. Actually, Russia moving into Ukraine, 2020. It's kind of curious. And now it's coming out. We can all watch it from the fictional perspective. And it was something that Steve played there in regard to the Reagan clip. I mean, Reagan, I don't know. So you want to be careful what you say. But I think Reagan was onto a psychological point. I fear that he may have gotten us in more messes than he got us out of in that regard, though. But just that whole idea of unifying together against for common cause. Like, what is the common cause here? Especially thinking about the Russia-Ukraine is kind of a broader thing. I think they're just wanting us to get more into these global actors. Same way with the as I was saying about the train spill there. Let's take it to someone who can actually do something about it. Some global actor.
At the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
Hey, where's Greta, by the way, during all this?
She's as far away as she can because she ain't getting involved with that. That's actually real. That's real danger, man. That's not getting on a boat.
Back in my hometown of Spartanburg, there was a train accident yesterday. Now, Buttigieg was out saying there's a thousand accidents happen every year, but they could just be playing. And here's Helen of Destroy. She had a good post. She was one of the first to post about it. She goes, "Wow, everyone was freaking out over the spy balloon, quote unquote, hyping up fake UFOs. Your friendly neighborhood police state was filling the air with cancer. But don't worry, the benefits payouts will be on per tumor bias. You're going to make out like bandits." And I keep on going with what was going on yesterday. Here, cloud seeding. What was that first video? Chemtrails all over. You looked outside the other day, it was a sunny day, and it was grids all over the place. So yeah, while they're burning stuff down here, they're sticking stuff up there too. And no one seems to care. It's the whole other thing about the balloon thing. Everyone was freaking out about.
Man, come on, man. The Super Bowl was last week. Why would anybody care? Just saying. In that regard. But you actually set us up perfectly, Steve, for the distractions, talking about the UFOs and all this other stuff, because last week we talked about the Chinese car sales balloon that apparently broke off of a used car lot somewhere in Beijing and floated across the ocean to scare all of us. And now last weekend, the Air Force, I guess they got the green light, so they're just shooting anything that's in the sky right now. They're just shooting it all down. And they're racking up all these kinds of kills. I don't know if you saw the meme coming around where it was like an alien and it was a balloon, and instead of like Nazi planes like they used to do in World War II, now they're just chalking up balloons and aliens. But it's all become quite normalized quite quickly, Fwaz. We were like, oh my goodness, it's an unidentified flying object. Now it's like, hey, it happened like 9 times during the Trump administration. Now we're just blowing the hell out of all these things anyway. So why not?
Yeah, if you look at scripture, when our Lord talks about, I guess, what we call the end times, I'm not saying that we're in the end times, because if you look at certain apparitions, you're looking at, Bellarmine, you're looking at certain, series of events that have to happen before that we know that Christ talked about. One of the things they talk about towards the end is not only that are we going to have earthquakes and famine and stuff like that be closer together and more severe, and more often. He used the word deception. That even the elect will be deceived at that time, at those times, and it's so hard in this web of deception to try to figure this out. It's like, well, are the balloons distraction from the train? Is the train distraction from Pfizer? Is the Pfizer distraction from what? Like, all of these people have layers and layers of distractions. Now they're talking about this whole alien thing, and because here's my thing: in order for you to understand, like Fulton Sheen said, only those with faith understand the times that are coming. Because my thing is, let's think about this for a second. You have to be a devout Catholic to understand what's happening. Not only a devout Catholic, but you have to be a devout Catholic in understanding of the church's tradition and what the tradition talks about in the coming times. Because let's say, for example, that the Antichrist comes along. Guess who's going to be deceived? The Protestants. Anthony will be deceived, yeah. Protestants think that we're going to get raptured first. So if there's no rapture, then that's not Christ's return yet. You have the Jews who don't even believe that Christ already came. So the Antichrist might be the guy, that's it. There's the Messiah. It's only the Catholics, the devout Catholics, who understand the events that are going to happen towards the end, and what what's coming ahead. So it's very important for you to stay devout, for you to get closer to Christ, for you to, have the sacraments and be as holy as you possibly can, because deception is everywhere. Not only deception in what the world's putting you through and the WF, the World Economic Forum, but deception also in our faith. What's going on in Twitter, misinformation of Catholicism, distractions everywhere. St. Vincent Ferrer says, when you wake up in the morning, before you do anything, say the creed, so that it'll set you up to understand what the faith teaches, so you're not deceived throughout the day. And this is why it's so important for you to be Catholic, for you to be a devout Catholic who understands the faith. And go, with that, more specifically with the whole UFOs, listen, it's not like Russia, China, and the US come up with brand new technological aircrafts and then put out a commercial about what we have next. Like, we all know that they have things that none of us know about. We all know, like, China has, aircrafts, and so does Russia, and not all of these technologically advanced countries have, that we don't know about. These things are not commercialized once they come out. It's not a new car that they commercialize for us. So obviously we know it's not aliens, because I don't know about you guys, but they've spent decades and decades telling us how these life that are light years away, and they're light years ahead of us in technology. They have the technology we can't even fathom. They have weapons we can't even fathom, right? This fairy tale story. All of a sudden, they come over here in the U.S. and we're able to defeat them with 30-year-old missiles, and they expect us to believe this? I mean, give me a bit. Like, what is this? Are they sending us the bad ones first, like the ones that are not? So it's a distraction from deception after deception. Stay close to the faith. It's okay to be informed, but it takes 5 minutes. You can turn on your news, or you look at your phone 5 minutes. Okay, I 10 minutes, I'm done. I'm up to speed. But don't lose your peace. It's best, and Lent's coming up. This is a great lesson with Lent, is for us to dive deeper into Christ, because guess what? My death will come quicker than the end of the world, and I should be more concerned about that.
Well, technically, the end of the world comes for all of us at one point. The end of our own time of it.
That should be the main focus.
Yeah. Don't worry about the Chinese balloons or the big inflatable guy that they put on parking lots. John, this whole distraction, you touched on it before, so you can kind of just put a pin on that. The distraction from the controlled demolition, the continue. You mentioned John. The funny thing is, I love the first 2 seasons of that show on Amazon. I watched both of them, but this year this season with the Ukraine stuff, I couldn't really get into it. I haven't even finished like the 3rd episode, because I just thought this is way too on the nose when I started watching that. We just want to put a pin in to this idea that you brought up earlier about the distractions from everything else and the idea of a one world government. Do you think and like when Steve played the clip with when they have an alien invasion or something of that, you think it's just the newest phase or way to get people, since they didn't, jump on the coffee cough and all these other things, maybe it's just another way to reintroduce that concept?
Yes, exactly. In fact, all I would do is echo what you just said there, Rick, and what Enoch, my man, just laid out very well for us. And let's be honest, guys. What Steve's been banging that same drum for the last, I don't know, decade now. It's a bit.
That's why he's the Godfather. That's why Steve's the Godfather, baby. You guys think I say these things in jest? They come in fact.
Oh, that's you know what, that I was thinking about how I was going to cut some sort of joke about that. Yes, Steve is the Godfather. So that made me think as Fawaz is talking about Lent, we got to take it to the mattresses against Satan. So I'm reading the Life of Anthony by Saint Athanasius, and I've told a lot of people this that are my friends around here. If you want to talk about Saint Athanasius standing up for the faith in that day, and especially if you want to dare make some sort of comparison between him and any modern figure, you have to read his Life of Anthony and see how the man considered obedience, self-humiliation, and disbelief of oneself. Okay. And the fight against Satan. I mean, he saw all this as integral to just being a good Christian. I'm not saying just to be a saint or to be a bishop or an abbot of a monastery or something. He saw this as necessary for the Christian life. Okay. So abnegation, denial of self, which is what part of one of the three pillars, really, I would say, of Lent, learning how to tell someone's self no, and especially the perverse desires we have, but even legitimate desires, learning how to tell ourselves no during Lent. So, I mean, that is, to get back to the point of kind of the question here, I think that's the aim of these distractions, is to keep us away from our focus on the higher things. Okay. They don't want us to have any time to think, really. And so that's why no matter what happens, I mean, maybe at some point the distractions will not work well enough and they'll have to, have some sort of EMP or something that will take out some electronics for a time. But I don't think the global actors, I don't think will ever go so far as to really remove our access to devices and all, because those sorts of things, I think, are crucial for the current madness. They have to keep us distracted, because otherwise, if we just had a few quiet seconds, as Fawaz was talking about, just, to catch up for 10 minutes on the news and all, and then just get back to your focus. If the average Joe was able to do that, and Jane, we'd be in such a healthier state right now as a, not just as a nation, but as a world. They can't have that, so there's going to have to be these worthwhile distractions. It's something that, is not just your everyday run of the mill, Will Smith slaps Chris Rock. I mean, that can only work so often. So it has to be something a little bit bigger. My worry is that these sorts of distractions, whether it be the so-called UFOs and other sorts of things, at a certain point, I think they're going to start playing a little bit too dangerously. And as brilliant as some of these global actors are, and the ones who are kind of moving more behind the scenes, you don't always see all of the effects that's going to come from your actions. So I think even that's one of our saving graces, or I think it will be that saving graces, is that they're not going to understand just how far some of the effects are going to travel. I mean, I say that with a little bit tongue in cheek in regard to the latest spill, but they can't really know fully. And so, yeah, we got to keep our focus on what we have to do right now in our state of life in order to take care of our families, right? And so if we do that, I think we'll be set. But, for the time being, it's funny. I saw that there was, speaking about movies and all, there was that movie that came out by, I think it was Leonardo DiCaprio and a few other, maybe Meryl Streep, a few famous actors where they're
Don't Look Up.
Yep. About, the impending end of the world because something was going to hit the earth and all, something like that. I mean, I would say actually do look up, do continue to look up. But what I'm talking about is look up to our Lord and God, look up to the Blessed Mother, because those are the sorts of things that are going to remind you, as you guys were just saying, of our final end, the end that's coming for all of us. If we keep looking up to God, to Our Lady, to the saints. I mean, no matter what happens on this earth, we are going to be fine. Take a look, see what the latest they're telling us about. As for I said, take 10 minutes to catch up on the latest, because it may be something that you have to use to the knowledge of to take care of you and your family. But after that, get back to protecting you and your family. You know, so I just say that I think they are distractions, but at the same time, you do kind of little one here. You do have,
hey, little one.
say hey. You do have to note some of the distractions in order to take care of your family. You know, case in point.
100%. And babies are awesome. Steve, I mean, everybody else has mentioned it. All props and credit to Steve for ringing the bell for as long as he has on all of this. And it's kind of just really, how does it feel? Let me ask you this, like, you're a Super Bowl winning quarterback. How does it feel to watch everything that you've been yelling about for 5 years finally happen?
I wish I was an idiot. This isn't exactly reading tea leaves. This is just looking out where you see bad clouds coming. Hey, it's going to rain, and taking the 5 minutes, or like, even like, you know, for a while, talk about 10 minutes. It's not like I sit there behind the desk for hours doing this. You see how many videos I put up during the week. I've uploaded this week. I haven't finished 20 that I've already done. It's Thursday, not counting recording. So it's not like I just sit there and just scan the interwebs for it. I can find this stuff in minutes. I listen to podcasts of secular guys. That's why I don't listen to Catholic podcasts, because I just can't stand those guys. So I listen to other things and read the saints, read Gamarje, read the good books like Jonathan brought up, Saint Anthony of the Desert. Him and I were talking about, one of the demons say, anything but God. And this whole fear thing, all they were going to do, the communist, Father Rip talks about this in his communist series about overloading. They just shoot you with all these stuff coming at all this stuff, so you don't have any time to think. It's just bombarded with all this, fear, panic. Oh, there was a book I was reading the other day. I can't remember which one it was. That just spoke of exactly about that. It's just fear, just being pounded down on you. That's why you got to keep the joy, the 3 cheers for joy idea. Here's a deep fake. I don't know if anybody knows what a deep fake is. It's videos that actually, think that it's real. Like, there's porn videos of people like, actresses. It ain't them, but they use it in there. So you got to be cognizant of what's going on. Stuff you see on the web, internet, question everything. Look it up to find out, is this real? Here's Biden, or Brandon, whoever you want to call it, on this topic.
As the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Joint Forces.
And remember, this is a deep fake.
I am here today to inform you that a number of unidentified flying objects have appeared over many parts of our country. Though their exact origin remains to be fully determined, the FBI has informed me that it is very likely that these are visitors of extraterrestrial nature. I advise the American people to remain calm, not fall into panic, and wait for further announcements. We shall overcome this threat.
People might saw, if I didn't say, I had to keep saying the deep fake, not real, because people are losing. I've seen that being shared all over the place. People are losing their minds about this.
How can you fall for that? He didn't stumble at least 4 times during.
That was the best rebuttal. So, what are you talking about? That was the best he spoke. Well, what's her name? Jean-Pierre has said that he's the best communicator in the history of the presidents.
Maybe the AI version, like you just showed, but
if
he was talking about aliens, he would have been like, and I saw him back in '56. Back when I first saw them, they were here on the pool and they touched my leg.
Believe me.
I was like, come on, man. So he would have gone off for 15 minutes about aliens in Area 51 or something like that. But yeah, that is scary.
He bought him ice cream. The lady that I showed before that said that was one of the first to put the train wreck on. Mm-hmm. And somebody mentioned that, Tom. Yeah, that was right. The overbearing wheel, too much weight. They were using that. There was an article on that as well. Here's what she's talking about, and I think Corbin mentioned this too, about faking an alien invasion.
An alien invasion, if the tech is there to support it. And then you've got all this stuff about UAPs and a new branch of the government and the Pentagon saying, yeah, maybe there is something out there. And you can kind of see the stage being set. Do you think that they could really pull that off? Because that's kind of my thing, is I just think it's a bridge too far. I think the whole faith in government would collapse under the weight of this really lofty plan they might have. But what do you think?
No, I think that they can completely pull it off. Say you have already a lockdown and everybody's already inside in their homes. and you tell people that, well, you can't go outside because there's like poisonous stuff in the air or whatever, and this is before the aliens show up. And then you have just really good special effects, and you have the video of it on everybody's screens, and everybody sees it. But it's always, say, if you're in New Jersey, you say, oh, it's over the sky in San Francisco. If you're in San Francisco, you say, oh, it's over the sky in Canada. And then you cut the phone lines or something so that people can't compare notes. I mean, this is just me speculating.
And she goes on for a while on that, but it's not. Oh, by the way, I forgot about this one. The Babylon Bee. Our test showed water in East Palestine is safe for drinking. Okay, as last
Buttigieg's got to put on some makeup, man. That does not look good on him.
Yeah. As Ryan Christian of the Vagabond goes, who had Project Bluebeam on their government PSYOP bingo card? Because fourth UFO spotted over U.S. hours after taking down airborne object. And how bad would we look if we were using F-22 Raptors to take down a balloon? It's hilariously sad. But they're using those words, unidentified flying object. They're using that. That's not accidental. They're trying to get that into our heads. What is Project Bluebeam anyways? This one of the, here it is right here, long-standing but unproven conspiracy theory. Canadian investigative journalist Sergei Monast first talked about the theory in the mid-90s. The theory, which has resurfaced again, claimed that the project was created by agents at the Pentagram and at NASA, or Pentagon. In 1994, Monast alleged that the investigation piece of the UN and NASA were aiming to create New Age religion. Monast was arrested twice in 95 and 94. He later died of a heart attack, probably died suddenly. After his death, the theory remained popular, but there's no evidence to prove it. And it's about stuff like this. All possibilities are open, he says, unidentified flying objects, all this nonsense. UFOs, this is from February 13th. It has been happening for years, Marco Rubio says. UFOs have routinely operated over restricted U.S. airspace, but America has no idea what they are or where they come from, as the Pentagram refuses to rule out 3 objects shoot down over the weekend are aliens. Here's Alien Madness from 2017. USAC a spat of crazy UFO sightings over the past 48 hours. So again, it's nothing new under the sun. It's just how many years later, 7 years later, that they're trying it again, they're rolling it out. And you talk about the holograms. I mean, that's amazing what they can do with holograms. Don't believe your eyes if you see it on TV. Here's another one coming out of the sky. I mean, what if you saw that on your TV, like the lady was talking about? Here's something that they have, right in Times Square.
They've been doing this stuff in Japan for years.
Oh yeah, you got before the year ended, they had the drones going off and putting out symbols in the sky and things like this. And basketball stadiums, they have this. And concerts, they have
the next frontier in advertising. They're gonna start doing advertising with drones in the sky.
Concerts. So make sure question literally everything. I mean, just don't take anything anybody says as gospel. Look it up if you find anything. Yes, don't worry, pray, hope, don't worry, literally. I mean, I'm not worried about it. There was one in the Philocly, I think it was talking about the not worrying about the birds of the air, God feeds them. There's preparation, and then there's trust in our Lord. We are supposed to trust in God. How much faith do we have? He's going to be fine. And someone's like, oh, Russia might nuke us. Well, as long as you're in a state of grace, who cares? If we get nuked, and you just got back from confession, you've been living like a saint, you're trying to convert everyone, your heart, you're pure of heart, you're living the Fatima message. Who cares if you just get nuked right there? I mean, you should be happy about that one. but we everyone in there still thinks about living worldly in a sense. Read Garanger for this weekend, for Sunday coming up, especially you fellows out there that like to trash people online. The epistle of St. Paul is the eulogy on charity. If you can move mountains and lack charity, you're nothing, basically. You're a loud gong. So make sure we live the gospel message literally, not just listen to it and we like it in Latin. No, who gives a darn if it's in German or whatever, if you don't pay attention to it and you don't live it? Who cares? The language is great, but if you don't live it, who cares? So just get your minds ready for it. Lent is coming pretty fast up on us. Next week is Ash Wednesday. Yes, there's a lot of stuff going on out there. This should give you motivation to do penance. The message of Our Lady of Lourdes, penance, 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 Fatima, La Salette. There's a great book a friend of mine sent me on, it was Listen to Our Lady. And it's going through all the stuff that's happened in the last 400 or 500 years. And it's, Our Lady's warnings, and nobody's paying attention to it. How many first 5 Saturdays? Are we talking about that? The 40 hours devotion next week? What's it going to take for people to bend the knee a little bit more? That's kind of what I think what the other gentlemen are talking about as well. Yeah, we can bring up all the news we want, but what are we going to do about it? All right, be Catholic. We are the Marines of the world. Let's live it.
Well, Americans need humility first before they can do anything else, and that's one thing that we are strongly lacking. Speaking of somebody who demonstrated humility, let's get this last one in here. We'll talk about Father Sean real quick and what he went through out in the UK as a demonstration of something we should be highlighting and really focusing on as an example.
Everyone has the right to pray in their mind. I'm pleased that I've been cleared of all the charges today and have cleared my name. It's wrong for the authorities to censor parts of the street from prayer, even silent prayer, from peacefully having conversations and sharing information that could be of great help to women who want an alternative choice to abortion. I pray every day, everywhere I go, and prayer can never be a crime. But I was charged for praying for freedom of speech and for an old bumper sticker on my car that read Unborn Lives Matter. I stand by my convictions. Unborn lives do matter. Every human being is precious and equal, and I'm proud to be a voice for the unborn, the most vulnerable group of people in our country. Abortion is harmful to women as well, and because of this, much of my ministry as a priest is dedicated to helping women and men affected by abortion trauma to find healing and hope. Whatever your views are on abortion, we should all be able to agree that in a democratic country, we should not be in the business of prosecuting thought crimes. Thank you to everyone who's come here to support me today. But this isn't just about me. The story isn't over. If the government imposes censorship zones around every abortion facility in the country, as they're considering doing with the public order bill currently under discussion, who knows how many more people are going to stand trial? How many people are going to be put in prison for offering help, for praying in their mind? I call on the government to look into the overwhelmingly positive work that the vast majority of pro-life groups do to support vulnerable women at their point of need, before censoring the streets of the United Kingdom and allowing good people to be criminalized for acts of love.
Yeah, very powerful stuff there. Very powerful stuff there.
Baby
With,
show and tell day.
oh, more babies. Nice. Look at that little dude. Babies' lives do matter because look how adorable they are over there. And so thoughts real quick on what Father Sean went through, and that is who people need to be not uplifted but highlighted and say, listen, this is how you practice the faith. You go out there, you don't tweet about it, you don't put out a show about it, you go to the street corner and you pray, and if you come into trouble, you accept it. You don't whine, you don't complain about it, and you accept your struggle and you offer it up to God. So if anybody has anything to add on what Father Sean went through in his example, you can jump on in.
Can I say something about lawyers real quick? I looked into
jump on in.
Lawyer taking care of him here in this, and it got me thinking. It's really a lucrative profession, the law profession. You see signs for it all the way here in Atlanta, where we live now. I mean, it's everywhere. It was in Florida too when we were there, all over. The big advertisements for called this lawyer if you're in an accident. I mean, I know there's different sorts of law too. Not everything's quite as lucrative, but I think we need to appreciate and pray for the many, many lawyers who, especially in the last few.
Exactly, John. Thank you for that.
We lost Clyde.
Yeah, he was making too good of a point, so the overlords cut him.
Share something. Well, I wanted to, as Jonathan can come back. I wanted to share something that that Steve was talking about, I think is very important. I'm reminded of a story of Saint Teresa of Avila, and she was a very, very holy soul. I remember the story of her, being asleep, and she heard noises in the middle of the night. And was curious what was making those noises, and when she finally saw who it was, and the devil appeared, she literally said, "Oh, it's just you." Turned right back around and went back to sleep. And that is literally how we should see. This is the type of stuff what you guys just played that should be circulating the Catholic social media. But it's not sexy enough, unfortunately, and we fall into this click here. How many the Grammys? Everybody showed the Grammys. It was with Sam Smith and those guys. The Grammys this year got the lowest amount of viewership of any Grammys in the longest time. That's a good thing. That means all the people who are watching the Grammys are the people sitting in their basement, talking about how the social justice warriors. That is a good thing. But what did we do? We literally quadrupled that viewership because we wanted to give our input on it. We literally gave the devil a platform in the Catholic media because people had to hear our opinion on it. The devil likes attention. He wants more of it. If we just shut him down, and just like Teresa of Avila said, "Oh, it's just you," ignore. We should put this kind of stuff, like what Father was saying, this kind of stuff should be flooding social media, not the sensationalism. That's why I wanted to share that.
No, it's a great point. It's a very good point because we tend to only lift up the negative because that's supposedly social media engineers it so it gets the most clicks for the dopamine hit and all that kind of stuff. So all good points there, gentlemen. Looks like it is time for everybody's favorite part of the day. It's time for the crime room. I was going to go with John first, but apparently the internet didn't like him, so they put him in the crime room. Hopefully he can jump back in at any point. So Fwaz, do you have anybody for Saint of the Week and crime room?
You're muted.
Fwaz, you're muted, bud. You pulled a Barrett.
Oh, I was gonna. I have a Saint of the Week. I was gonna pick this. My pick's gonna be surprising. I was gonna pick the gentleman who was arrested for trying to cover the Ohio story. We need more people like him who's not afraid to to go to bat for us, literally sacrifice his freedom for. But I'm actually gonna go with Sarah Palin. To be honest with you, I know she's been catching a lot of flack for what she said. She said that Governor DeSantis is too young. He should focus on Florida and not worry about the presidency. And that she's absolutely right. That's what we've been saying. What good is it going to do to send somebody that's one of our guys out in DC to just make the government even stronger? Why? Because it's what we like. To make DC even bigger. Leave him there. Let him finish out his 8 years. Because if he finishes out strong, he could arguably be one of the greatest 8-year stretch of governorship that we've seen. And when you have more people flooding to your state, as he did during the 2020 COVID and even the net positive that he got in his state, that's going to show future governors and how to govern your state the correct way. He could be a great example for future governors, not only in Florida, but across the country. But you put him in D.C., it weakens his effectiveness, to be honest with you, because D.C. is such a swamp that he's going to be ineffective. He's not going to get much done. We're going to get Bush-type neocons in there that are just going to continue, and then Florida ends up becoming a cesspool after that. So I say kudos to Palin. She's catching flack because people want him to be president so much. Keep that man in Florida as long as possible. So that's my saying.
For him, it's going to be the more the merrier.
Mm-hmm. Does you think DeSantis jumps in?
DeSantis doesn't need to. I envision him as our president someday, but not right now. Everybody I speak with in Florida, they all love him. And he does set the tone for, I'd say, every other governor in the nation. I think he's our best governor. And he should stay governor for a bit longer. He's young. He has decades ahead of him where he can be our president.
I agree. I think he should be the king of Florida.
Hey, people seem to love him. He got reelected in just in a massive sweep, and I think DeSantis means well, and I think he's a pretty good guy, and he should keep him in Florida. My cry room, unfortunately, I hate to do this, but my cry room is going to be not only the bishops who were not even dressed in their clerics at the synod, but more specifically, my old bishop, Bishop McElroy in San Diego. I know him. He used to come when I was a director of youth ministry in San Diego. He used to come and do confirmations, and I could join him for lunch in between confirmation because we had such a large program. And just recently, all the stuff that he's just been putting out is just he's just been spewing it because of the synod. So I'm going to put Bishop McElroy in the choir room for now.
All right, good call, Steve. What do you got?
I forgot to add into the last the UFO thing of it's not just us. China, United Kingdom, they're all talking about balloons. So it's like we brought up the last couple episodes. What other time period when everyone's using the exact same playbook at the exact same time as that the fix is in. Just keep your eye on the prize. So my saint of the week will be Thomas Massey. Fawaz will like it. He went out and said he wants to terminate the Department of Diseducation. God love him. If anybody knows anything, it's not in the Constitution. It's not the federal government's idea to do it. It's a state thing, which, by the way, as Thomas Jefferson talked about, a state is the country, like Palin was talking about, in our nation. No, in our union. It's Brian McClanahan has a great video of the Pledge of Allegiance, which I refuse to ever say. If you get mad at that, fine. It's written by a socialist who is a nationalist who wanted centralized government. If you say the pledge and worship the flag, you want centralized government. Don't complain about what's going on. I don't say it because nobody in the history of the right mind would do that until Bellamy, who was, again, kicked out of the Baptist church before being a socialist, penned that stupid pledge. And by the way, that was the original salute. You want to be trad? Do that. Trad nationalist.
The more you know.
My cry room, the YouTube CEO, Wojciech, whatever her last name is. One of the first Google employees steps down after years of being a terrible person, and you know the story. And this guy just got in real time, and that moved. He just got hired. I don't know who this guy is. Neil Mohan said once created this.
I think he's an underling. He's been working there for a while too.
Yeah, pretty sure he's not going to be.
He's not Elon Musk. I'll tell you. Yeah,
he's not gonna make YouTube any better. So there's my cry room there for both of those, I guess.
Yep. Since John is out, I am going to very interesting, very controversial Saint of the Week, last minute addition. That is Don Lemon, who had a very interesting take on Nikki Haley, who has just announced her bid to get blown out by Donald Trump in the primaries. So Don Lemon said that Nikki Haley isn't in her prime as a politician because she's not in her 20s, 30s, or 40s. She's 51. Even a broken clock is right twice a day on that one. I don't like women in politics anyway, so I'm going to give Don Lemon a little bit of credit on this one, although I'm pretty sure he's going to get tossed out the door because of that mention. And my cry room is me because I blew Steve's gag earlier with the masks. So I'll put myself in the cry room on that one. That was a pretty good gag. And I let him sweat it out for like 45 minutes in the mask. So I
got a shower now.
So I got to throw myself in the cry room for that one. Looks like we got one addition to today's topics.
Yeah, I mentioned the die silently thing. I'll bring this up. Remember that guy we talked about a couple weeks ago, Stanley Wilson? He died.
Oh, yep.
He dropped a couple days after Hamlin.
Do you see the thing that? Do you see the? I know nobody watched the Super Bowl, but did anybody catch the jacket that Hamlin was wearing?
Yeah, he came out and apologized for it today or yesterday.
Well, the mockery of our Lord and Savior will not be tolerated. That dude, not great.
And here locally, Charlotte High School player collapsed during a basketball game. And
it's all right. It's the aliens, Steve. It's the aliens.
For their souls.
Yeah, amen to that. Absolutely amen to that. And unfortunately, you got all these other distractions. Nobody's going to really be focusing on these this tragedy that's taking place. That's it, folks, for News from the Pew. Thanks for hanging out with us. Please like, subscribe, and share the News from the Pew. We'll talk to you next week. We will firmly be into Lent. We'll talk to you then. God bless, and Viva Cristo Rey.